Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sybil Amuti. Great Girlfriends, we are in for an absolute treat. I mean, if you have been on the pre-call to the call, you would know that my guest today is humorous. She's strong, she's savvy, she's beautiful, she's smart and ambitious, and she's supportive. So I want to welcome today I think, Elayne, I'm going to go ahead and call you my newest great girlfriend.
I'm your girlfriend.
Great girlfriend.
Let's do it. We done shared all the things before we even started recalling. So yes, we are great girlfriends for sure.
Go ahead and do that. I'm gonna call you my newest great girlfriend, Elayne Fluker.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you, Sybil.
I know. And let me tell you something, Elayne. I don't know if comedy's in your next, But do consider the humorous side of it. Do consider it. Oh my goodness. Because isn't it something, great girlfriends, when you can meet someone who you've orbited for years and you've admired and you have conversation, you're like, I see why we orbited. I completely understand why we were meant to have this conversation today. Because I get you, Elayne. I totally get you.
I know. You're silly like me, or have the silly side. It's fun.
Yes. So you're a fellow pod mama. You've been podcasting a long time, and you're a coach, and you're an advisor, and you are an influencer, and you are newest an author. There's so much I want to talk to you about today, but I want you to just tell my audience, if you had to describe Elayne, how would you describe yourself?
Well, silly, as you can hear, that's the fun side. That's how I keep it light with myself and my girlfriends and you, my new great girlfriend. But yeah, I think one of the things that's really important to me is supporting other women. It always has been. Now it's become part of my, brand and all these other things, but just really being a support, whether as a friend or a mentor or even as a mentee in whatever way that I can. I think that's really at the core of who I am. I finally realized that. Always been compassionate. I've always been that little girl that wanted to adopt all the children that I saw on TV. My mom would be like, no, we are not bringing no. Or if we're driving through certain, can we bring them home? No, we're just making it no. So, but yeah, so I've been fortunate. I would say, I would describe myself as someone who is truly blessed to be able to, at this point, I feel like in my life, be able to create work that really aligns with who I am as a person. And not that it always has to be that way, but I will tell you, it helps you get up in the morning. It helps you feel excited about work. It helps you connect with wonderful people like yourself. And so I really am just in such a space of gratitude right now.
I love it. I love it. So Elayne, you have been in the empowerment space for a long time. And I feel like a lot of that space is shifting, right? I feel like, COVID had a lot of people reorienting and, getting on the boat saying, save yourself a bit. And so there's a few people left out in the water saying, hey, I really want to make sure that women feel anchored and that women feel connected and empowered. And I think for you that, like you said, that has been something that is true to who you are as a woman, as a businesswoman, as a human. And I want to know, what wakes you up in the morning and what fuels your ambition?
Great question. COVID definitely, for all of us, the world, right? Not even just in the United States, all of us slowed things down. You had to spend some time with yourself. Even if you were with your family, you were really spending some time with yourself, and hopefully were able to reflect during that time. And God bless anyone who lost family, friends, any loved ones from COVID, which has just been really hard on so many people. Absolutely. That definitely slowed me down. But then I will say it was the murder of George Floyd and everything that happened during the summer that really made me shift my perspective on some of the work that I was doing. Because, while we were all, I wasn't marching. I have parents who were in their 90s, so I wasn't able to go out there. I didn't want to risk it. But as far as catching the virus, but making the donations or doing whatever we were to support the movement, I had to have a moment of reflection with myself, Sybil, and say, okay, but what are you doing? While you're calling out for, justice and wanting people to treat us fairly and equity and equality and all of these things, but what am I doing? So my podcast, Support is Sexy, which you mentioned earlier, I did started 5 years ago in July 4th, 2016, actually. And it has always been all about women entrepreneurs. That's who I wanted to talk to. Those are the stories that I wanted to hear. And it's women from all different backgrounds from all around the world. Thank you, Internet. So I can reach women everywhere.
Yes.
But during the time that I paused, though, after everything was going on this summer, I took a minute to reflect and say, I am really passionate right now about servicing Black women entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe entrepreneurship, whether you still have your full-time job or whatever that looks like, or you're moving into entrepreneurship or you're moving into it from another space that you were in, is so empowering just to know that you can create something or make something or whatever it is and sell it to someone,
Yeah,
make
for
money
sure.
off it, offer, I say offer it rather than sell it, but offer it to someone and make just that. It's very much, I believe, a psychological benefit as much as it is financial and all the other things. It's actually, I say, one of the greatest lessons in personal development entrepreneurship is because it will show you what you're made of.
Ciao.
Right. And you look at Black women are the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs in the country. We're in the US, the highest educated, all these things,
That's
but we
right.
get often the least support.
That's right.
So I decided to shift, put on the brakes, shift, do a sort of announcement, if you will. And I was nervous about it because I have women from, again, all backgrounds. I still do that on my podcast, but I was like, oh no, they're going to feel alienated. Oh no, this is going to happen. And instead, I will tell you all of the wonderful non-Black women that I know who are allies and friends, and I consider them sisters. They were like, thank God you're focusing on Black women. This is what I want to do for them. This is what I want to offer. This is what I have. How can I do? And it became this sort of bigger bubble of women who wanted to support each other and them
Mm-hmm.
saying, how can I become more involved? What can I do? What do you think the community needs from me? So I sort of became this connective tissue, if you will, between the Black women entrepreneurs that I knew and the other women that I knew. And it just has created so many beautiful partnerships and opportunities I couldn't imagine. So
Oh,
that's
I love
how
that.
last year really affected me. I think that the movement over the summer, which obviously the movement has been going on for a long time, but
Yeah.
it
The
really helped
summer,
me
it,
stop.
it, it, it struck, it hit hard.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
my parents were saying, I haven't seen this since the 60s.
Right.
It was a different, totally different. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was a different vibe, a different energy. And it was the uprising I think we needed, the attention that we needed
Yeah.
was
Mm-hmm.
given it. So I want to know though, Elayne, were you seeking entrepreneurship when you stepped out to start Support is Sexy? I hear you saying as an intentional person, you wanted to reach women, you wanted to touch lives with the content, but were you seeking to be an entrepreneur? Were you already an entrepreneur?
I was already an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in media for 20 plus years. I started my career at Essence back in the day in the 90s. It
Ah,
was an
yeah.
amazing time to be there. I was an editor well, first an intern and then an editor at Essence magazine. During the time I didn't even know Black women like that existed, Sybil.
Wow.
Writers, editors, authors,
Yeah.
award winning. It just was a utopia for me. So I'm glad I not only started my career there in publishing, but came of age. I was in my 20s. So it really just, I think it impacted me in actually who I am today and how
Mm-hmm.
I show up for women today. So I worked in media for many years, had a great career. And in 2014, I was at Martha Stewart, and that's when I decided to take the leap and become an entrepreneur. So I had started Chic Rebellion .tv, which was an online video platform for women of color. So all different web series. I had produced 5 or 6 web series, and then I had women from other places around the world who published their web series. Always wanted to do something in media, right, and changing the
Yeah.
perspective of how we're. So I was thinking I was going to leave and focus on that. I actually ended up in 2014. I actually ended up still doing a lot in media because I was in New York. I knew so many people. So it's like you freelance for a while. You
Mm-hmm.
have your own business, but it's still more so freelance. But
Mm-hmm.
then in 2016, I was listening to I was working at Martha Stewart again, not full time, but doing a project. And I asked a friend of mine, what can I listen to? I don't want to listen to my Rihanna playlist all day, even though I love Rihanna. We have the
Yes.
same
Yeah.
birthday, February 20th.
Wow.
So I always say, I'm doing whatever Rihanna is doing on her birthday. Just
Mm,
imagine, just imagine that. But
I love it.
he
So then you should
recommended.
have about 20 tats by now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know. I got to catch up. I got to catch up. I'm her in my other life.
Yeah.
But yeah, a friend recommended a couple podcasts to me and I was hooked. But then I was like,
Mm.
well, where are the women podcasts? Not that they didn't exist, but it just all the ones I were listening to, which I still listen to, were all by men, all by
Mm-hmm.
white men,
Mm-hmm.
John Lee
Mm-hmm.
Dumas, Lewis Howes, all these other Tim Ferriss that I still listen to and love. Then I was like, well, where are the women entrepreneurs? Not the ones, I mean, I love these women, but the ones who are like, I launched a program over the weekend and I made $1 million. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, that ain't me and my friends.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we're like, girl, we need to get a job. What is going on? This entrepreneur thing is crazy, right?
Right,
So
right.
I wanted those stories. So that's how that started. I was like, I started off with my friends, Ty Beauchamp, many of the folks
Yeah.
that you know, my
Yeah.
girlfriends, my great girlfriends who
Hmm.
were entrepreneurs in all different ways. They were like, what podcast? What are you doing? Can I do it from my
Right.
phone? All right.
Right, right, right.
You know?
I remember those days. People like,
Yes.
how do I log
What is
on?
it?
How do I see it? You don't.
Girl, you don't, you
Listen.
don't. It's a
Okay.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had girlfriends tell me that, when can I watch your podcast? I was like,
Hmm.
first of all,
Hmm.
you're my grandmother right now. What are you talking about? So
It's such an auntie question. Yeah. Anybody who
such an
asks me that
auntie.
now, I know you're 60. Like I know. I'm like, you're 60 or 65. And yeah, I
Exactly,
know.
exactly.
Mhm.
But
But I remember
I don't
those
know.
days.
I don't know if you're that person, but I am that girlfriend though, where they're always like, "Girl, what are you doing now?" Okay, just tell me
Yep.
how to. But I
Yep.
love
How do I
if
find
they
it?
say, "How do I find it?" or "How if you want to interview me, what can I do it from my phone?" Okay, they
Yes.
just they just
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, and that's how it started. So to answer your question, I know that was a long way around, but to answer your question, I didn't know what it was going to become. I
Hmm.
actually had one girlfriend, Zara, who I interviewed very early on. She was like, "You have no idea how many women you're going to meet. You know how many fabulous women you're going to meet doing this." I'm like, "Really? You think so?" I just had. I wasn't thinking about it. I just like, these are stories that I know I want to share, that I want to
Hmm.
hear when it gets tough. And then the whole thing was around, how do you get support? And then it just
Hmm.
evolved from there. So I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but then not sort of, this really became a brand. That's when I started to
Yeah.
see that this could be something outside of just me, quote unquote, freelancing for these different media outlets, really creating my own thing.
Right, right. And new media was so different back then. I mean, we can offline about this, but we were in the same space, and I had worked in branding for so long, and podcasts were just not a thing back then. Great Girlfriends was launched in 2015. It wasn't a thing for Black women for sure. It was
Hmm.
again sterile white male voices. That was the culture of podcasting, and I loved it. I was like, well, I'm getting my uncles, my rich white uncles are giving me all the tea, and I'm taking
Exactly. That's
copious
right.
notes. I mean, I
Me
did. I
too.
was like entrepreneur on fire. I can
Yes.
go down the list of just game changers. Um, but that new media space it was uncharted territory, and it was even hard for people. I would say for me, and you can help me with this if this was your story, but it was hard for us to really help brands understand how impactful podcasts were, and how that audience share was going to be valuable to them. So when it came time to get support from brands in the beginning, it was a little slow, with the exception of brands that we already knew, already had relationship with, but people really didn't understand it. And so, I mean, a lot of times, Great Girlfriends, you'll find yourself in a space where you're introducing something new. It is innovative, or you're a part of a new wave, and you actually have to be the voice of the wave. I found myself in meetings, Elayne, giving people the one-on-one 101, excuse me, on podcasts first. And then saying, now that I've explained to you what a podcast is, this is how the Great
Right.
Girlfriends is
Right.
really, really moving and shaking in this space. Like this is why we're important. And they go, oh,
Hmm.
was that part of your experience as well?
No, I think you nailed it though, and how you described it about being on the new wave, but then having to be the voice of the new wave, which takes a
Mm-hmm.
lot of courage. A lot of us sometimes don't want to jump out there like that because everybody doesn't know about it yet, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with you in being early on, especially in the early days of podcasts. It was hard to find. It was hard for
Yes.
people to make the. Now it's super easy.
Yeah.
There's so many apps and things you can use. My story was more, I was doing it at first for the first 2 years. So when I first started, because I'm crazy and I always say I was channeling Oprah, even though Oprah had a team of people, I'm doing this by myself in my apartment in Brooklyn,
Oh yeah.
5 days a week. So
Yeah.
my show aired 5 days a week, Monday through
Wow.
Friday. I was interviewing women like crazy. That's how I ended up now having interviewed over 500 women. People are like, how did you do that? It's like, well, I did 5 women a week for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it was
Oh
crazy.
my gosh.
So that was the only thing I was focused on. I
Who was
didn't really,
editing, Elaine?
I was, girl, because I'm
Oh,
crazy.
glory. Okay.
Because I'm glory.
Ooh, because it's one thing to record. You can record all
Listen,
day, but that
oh,
editing.
I'd be up there at 4 a.m, like falling over on my laptop and I was really, because of Entrepreneurs on Fire, I was just like, well, he did it. I can do it. He did all these
Yes.
episodes. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Or I knew how to bulk record things. It is a mess, but it worked out. It worked out. Not a mess. It
Yeah.
actually turned out good. I was a mess because I was staying up all night trying to edit
Yeah.
episodes. But the for me, it wasn't until 2018 that I started having conversations. Actually, that's not true. I saw this woman. I'm drawing a blank on her name. She's the co-founder of Ad Large, and that's the company that works with me on sponsorship. I saw
Hmm.
her at an event. I stood up, it was podcast movement, I think. And I stood up and I asked a question about, they're always talking about podcasts with 50,000 or more downloads per episode or
Yeah.
100,000. And I mean, there's many that are like that, but most are not, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
asked the question like, well, what do the smaller podcasts do? Are you guys just not interested in them? And one woman on the panel, of course, said no, basically brands aren't interested in them. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And then the other woman, from Ad Large said something different. She said, no, actually, brands are looking for, especially now, this was 2018, more
Hmm.
niche audiences. So, sort of our brands like yours and mine that speak to a specific audience, whether it's women entrepreneurs or it's women of color, or it's, we have these
Hmm.
different demos, if you will, that we really focus on. So I was going up there after the panel to say hello and thank her for saying that because it felt encouraging. I know to me and probably to other people in the audience. And her co-founder, a gentleman, approached me in the line and asked me about the podcast because when I stood up, and this is a tip for everybody. When you go to these, or we used to, but even if you're doing it
Right.
online, these
Yeah.
networking tip. When you go to a conference and they have the times where you can ask a question, right? And people stand up. Hi, my name is Elayne, and my question is blah, blah, blah. Well, who are you? There's
Yeah.
a room full of like 300 people here. So
Yes.
I was like, I'm going to stand up and get this quick little line in and then ask my question. So I stood up and said,
Exactly.
hi, I'm Elayne, host of Supported Sexy Podcast, where I interview five women entrepreneurs 5 days a week. And I want to know, blah. And when he came up to me, he said to me, how do you interview women 5 days a week? How many? And he was asking questions about what I said in that tiny, but I didn't even know him. I was heading to the woman. Her
Hmm.
co-founder approached me and said, we would love to talk to you about, possibly working with you on sponsorship, et cetera. I didn't have a huge audience at that time. I was just, doing my thing, working
Yeah.
on it. And I got his card. And long story short, I was traveling after that for several months. And I ended up signing with them and I've been with them ever since. So
Oh,
they are the ones who
awesome.
isn't it? But you never know. I was heading up to see her and he approached me because of that. So when you're at
Yeah.
these events, I always tell people you should be able to say what you do in 10 words or less.
Oh, I love
Right.
it. That's so helpful. But
Yeah.
wait,
Say,
but now you've got 10 words or more. Now, because now not only do you have what, 5, 6 years of, has it
five
5 years
podcasting.
of over 500
Yeah.
episodes of shows and interviews, but you also have put in on paper a new book,
I did.
a
I
new
did.
baby.
I know.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I want
Yes.
to talk about your baby.
Thank you.
Because that's not easy. So let me just say this, great girlfriends. Let me just interrupt you real quick, Elayne.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think that it gets easier. And I tend to tell you, I believe it gets different. I don't believe it gets
Different.
easier. I just believe it gets different. And I believe that you exercise a certain muscle to the point that you condition it, but there's levels to it. And every time you step into deep water, it's still an unknown territory. And, some of the questions that you may have asked when you started your podcast, will people like it? Will they listen? Is it good? How do I know if I'm winning? And any of the stuff when you feel alone as an entrepreneur, you still come across some of those questions as you are leaping deeper into entrepreneurship, but you have conditioned yourself differently. So I want to know, before we talk about your baby, really quickly, the baby's on your heart. You want to put this out, right? And we've got a lot of people who are aspiring authors that listen to this show. So this is going to be a perfect conversation. How do you know that you're the one designed to deliver this message? What are some of the questions you're asking yourself along the way? And then what are some of the commitments you make to yourself to really see it, come to pass?
Yeah, so excellent questions. I one of the things I want to make sure to point out to all the great girlfriends listening is something that you said that I have adopted and shared with whether it's clients I work with or anyone I speak to. It's a big difference seeing something as difficult and seeing it as different. And you
Yeah.
mentioned it's different, right? Because often we say, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to start a podcast. It's going to be difficult. I don't know if I want to, write a book. It's difficult. They say it's difficult. We don't even know, right? They say, who is
Yeah.
they? They
Yeah,
say it's
yeah,
difficult,
yeah.
right? And it's like, is it difficult or is it going to be different? And
Yeah,
I think that language is so important. And if you decide to see, maybe it is difficult, but a lot of times we don't even know. We've already said it, but you
yeah,
can know that it's going to be different. You're going to stretch, right? Something I know
yeah,
you are very passionate about. You're going to
yeah.
stretch. You're going to use different muscles, just like working out or anything else. You're using a different muscle, a different part of your brain, or whatever it is. So I would offer that to everyone to catch what Sybil says. See it as different,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So writing a book. So this is some, ask me the questions again because I'll be going all rambling
Yeah,
off.
no,
But I
how did you know that you were the person
okay.
how would you know that you have this message on your heart, but how do you know that you're the person that's intended to deliver it to the world?
Well, I have been writing since I always say before I even knew how to write, even scribbling stuff on paper, which my mother has all of that saved.
Oh, that's
Writing on a
awesome.
on a typewriter, typing things
Yeah.
I didn't know how to spell, and so I just love the idea of writing, even though I didn't know, at that time that that was a career that you could actually have. So that has always been there for me. I've written many proposals, and because I was in publishing, I've talked to agents and stuff. So I always had a book in me. I didn't know what it was
Mhm.
going to be. But
Mhm.
then it all kind of came together. I think Steve Jobs says you can connect the dots looking back.
Mhm.
It all kind of came together after I started doing the podcast. And that's the thing, too, about I think moving by faith when you're just, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I don't know what this is going to be, but this feels like, speaking of the podcast for me, this feels like something I need to do right now to share
Mhm.
these voices for other women, with the good intention. But I had no idea that that was going to turn into the premise of the book. And to
Mhm.
answer your question, it felt like I was the one to deliver this because I had interviewed all these women and because I'd wanted to write a book for a long time and because people were saying to me how it was impacting them, the podcast even, and the message, support is
Yeah.
sexy, right? So the whole idea is having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I think
Mhm.
for us as ambitious women, it's like we're trying to do it all. And even your all, defining your all is different for all of us too, right? So there's a
Yes.
lot of layers there. And I just wanted to explore that. And it just was something I said, you know what? I need to figure out how to put this out into the world. And funny enough, the way I got support, found an agent because I was looking for an agent. I sent it to this agent that I've known for 20 something years. She said it wasn't my synopsis. She said
Mhm.
it wasn't the right fit. It broke my heart, but she said because she doesn't do self-help kind of books, which was
Mhm.
okay. So I went in my group, the Support is Sexy Mastermind, and I did what I tried. I had to walk my talk, girl.
Yeah.
I had to go in there and be like, listen, I'm looking for an agent. I really want to do this. I was calling it the Support is Sexy book at the time. Anyone know anyone? And my friend, former coworker, Corinne, I don't know if you know Corinne Corbett. Do you know Corinne?
Not
Corinne,
that no.
beauty editor at Essence. She posted, oh, Nick Childs, who's a published, famous, he would love that I said famous. That's not what I meant, but okay, Nick, I'll give you that. Famous author, but
Uh-huh.
Pulitzer Prize winner, et cetera. He had just become an agent and he posted on Facebook that he was looking for proposals. I was like,
Wow.
really? And I hadn't seen, we're connected, but this is the thing. You never know. That's why you got to ask for support, put it
That's
out
right.
there. I didn't see it. So I reached out to him. Long story short, he loved the idea. He became my agent. We created the proposal. He pitched it for a year. I had to go back and make some changes, which I'm happy to talk about if you want. You said you have a lot of authors. I'm happy to talk about that process.
Mhm.
And then eventually we landed with HarperCollins Leadership, and now it's coming out on May 11th. So it's called Get Over I Got It. And
Mm.
that's the name of it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, but Elayne, what were some of the questions you asked yourself along the way as you're
Um,
writing, and what were
am I
some of the
enough?
yeah, oh my God, that big one. Child,
That is the big one.
that's
I
the
think
big
before I
one.
even got on here, I'm like, am I enough to interview with Sybil? I don't
You
know.
better
She's kind of
stop
big.
all
She kind of
the
big time. The great girlfriend, they big time. They be doing like 75,000 downloads a minute or
you
something. like, let
better
me get my
stop.
girl. I put lipstick on for audio podcast.
I love it. I love it. But no, that
Get my
question
mind
comes
right.
up, right?
Listen, am I enough? It's my
Yeah.
thing. I think I even wrote about it in the book. While writing the book, am I enough? While doing the proposal. And I will tell you, in the proposal, there were editors who said, they didn't say you're not enough, but a
Yeah.
lot of, in publishing, traditional publishing, in traditional publishing, a lot of editors, not all, I don't want nobody, coming after me, but a
Yeah.
lot of editors, because of the pressure, it's not even them, it's all about social media.
Yeah.
How
Yep.
many and
Yep.
I'm like, but wait a minute. But I have been on the Today Show and Nightline and seeing I have connections at they're like, that's great. How many followers do you have on Instagram? it was
Mhm.
blowing my
And it just wants
mind.
you just wanna choke you
You
just
just
yeah,
want
wanna
to,
throw the
I
phone, you
was like,
just
I know. And from a branding standpoint, I'm sure, I mean, obviously having a great following is wonderful, especially if your audience is engaged.
if
But I
they
think
convert. Yeah, yeah, but
that
like, come
exactly.
on,
Tell them what
come
you mean,
on,
Sybil. What do
come
you mean when
on.
you say if they convert?
If
That is
if they are transactional, meaning if they engage and they trade time for money, converting for you, then yeah, they're valuable. But if they're just watchers, if they're fans, then no, they're not
exactly.
valuable. They're not
I just saw a
transacting.
report. I'm gonna send it to you. I'm sure you already know, but there was this trend report I was reading about marketing, content marketing, because that's what my business is. And
Mhm.
they talked about how there's been studies. This was 2021 report too. Anyway, there's been so many studies now that people who have over a million or so followers on social media platforms convert less than people
Yeah.
who have between 1,000 and 10,000.
Yes.
Come on
So then
now.
everyone went searching for micro influencers. They're like, we
Micro
need the smaller
influencers.
influencers. Now there's a
Exactly.
micro group. Now, yeah, that's
Exactly.
who we want.
Exactly. It's
Which
just
let me encourage somebody today in church to let you know right now from the pulpit. They don't know.
they don't
All of
know.
this is beta. All of this is like the first iteration, and everyone's learning along the way, which is why you can't pull your idea because you heard somebody say you need a million followers. You can't depend on that information. You really cannot.
Mhm.
You've got to know that you know, and like
And
for
that you are
you,
enough.
and that you are enough,
Yep.
and that everybody, the resources you have, all of that stuff, that's enough for you. Because let me tell you something, you never know who's in the audience of Support is Sexy that can pull the trigger on buying out 1,000 books for their corporate, for their corporate affinity group,
Exactly.
or who can buy out enough books to sell at their after school program, or who can give to their entrepreneur group. You
Mhm.
never know. And so you never want to discount the quality of the people and the resources you do have. Like
And that's
I'm
yes,
cool with
such
my connected group of people on Instagram. Those are my people. And if there's more that come, cool. But I cannot buy into it because I've seen so much more business happen outside of the gram space, you know, outside of the Facebook space, and because there are some brands and some people that believe in quality audiences, and the data is starting to show that the quality is way better than the quantity, way better.
That's right. And they
Yeah,
follow you, but do they feel connected to you? And I find it
exactly.
is those connections, even if you don't know the person, like someone, I listen to people I feel like I know, I've never met them, but or I
Yeah,
follow, or people you read, because you feel some sort of connection there. And that
that's
was
right.
so speaking of the I am enough with the proposal, Nick and I went back and I said, okay, I need to beef up the marketing part of it. So I
Hmm.
talked to this woman I know, Jennifer. She's someone who has reached out to me several times on the podcast. I had many of her authors. She's a publicist as a marketing person as guests. And I said, look, I want to pay you. This is what you got to do. Pay people for their time. I had to
Hmm.
pay her for an hour just to talk to me about marketing, book marketing. What has she seen? What are the trends? What should I talk about? And we just went through some ideas, and she's like, focus on the connections that you do have. Focus on, if I don't have a million followers, but I know someone else who I do know, many
Yeah.
people who do have a million or whatever, if that's what they want. Again, we've already told you that ain't, but you got to play the game and change
Yeah,
the
you have
game.
to put
This is what they want to
exactly.
see. I put the numbers in there. These people have these amounts. These are people, and you don't want to lie. So these are people that I was actually connected to. And I just beefed up the numbers so it looks better and bolder for the people who are receiving it to show. And these are the things that I would do, or these are the special promotions. So if you're working on a book and doing a proposal for a traditional publisher and you feel like, but I don't have the audience, what do you have? What
Mhm.
connections do you have? Or
Yeah.
what do your connections have? Or what
Yeah.
kind of events might you put on that'll be fun? So that's what I did. And that's what worked, because we
I
did
love
not
it.
get a bite until we changed that. And I decided to get support, because that's what we all about.
Yeah.
Get support. And sometimes you have to pay for that support. Not always, but I was like, no, this is serious. I want to pay you for an hour. This is not a favor. Like, I need all the goods. And
Hmm.
that's what we did. So yeah, that's how we got. So I am enough is very much a part of my ritual now, reminding myself of that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so Elayne, when can we purchase the book?
Now you
Oh,
can
so it's
purchase
already
now.
available. Yes.
Getoverigottit.com. Yes, getoverigottit.com. You can pre-order, please, please, please. It comes out again May 11th. And I have special offers on there. In fact, I talked about defining your all earlier when we were talking, and I have a worksheet there. You pre-order, email me your receipt and it'll tell you it's a workbook, 11 or 12 pages or so, just
Mm-hmm.
going through your all and all different categories of your life. What does it mean for you as far as your health, your finances, your relationship, all these areas where we sometimes haven't just sat down and thought about what really matters to me. And
Mm.
that's what's important. And I learned a long time ago, you have to decide what matters and what doesn't matter. If you decide that it matters, make it matter a lot. If you decide that it doesn't matter, then it shouldn't matter at all.
Mm.
So we
Mm,
have to
mm,
hone in
mm,
on what matters, right? So that
mm.
worksheet is there. If you decide to pre-order, if and even if you go to getoverIgot.com, you decide I ain't gonna order the book just yet. I hope you do. If you decide not, you can still join the email list, and this way I can keep you posted on other things that are coming up and going on, which will be fun stuff.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yay,
Elaine, let me tell you something.
ma'am! Listen, child, we've been busy over here trying to keep this ship afloat.
Elaine, oh my goodness. I can't thank you enough for jumping on today. There's going to be a part two. I'm just putting it out
I
there, and probably a
know.
3 and a 4, because you are so easy breezy to talk to. Great girlfriends, did you enjoy this week's episode of the podcast? If so, would you please give us your amazing review on iTunes? Every single review helps another great girlfriend get plugged into the podcast, into the community. Speaking of community, make sure you join our Facebook group, The Great Girlfriends. You follow us on Instagram at The Great Girlfriends and on Twitter at _Great GFS. Last but not least, we'd like to thank my amazing husband, Kwaku, Sam and Dilly, and all of you for being a part of the global community that makes us so strong. Please remember to share with your friends. Keep listening and keep being a great girlfriend. I'm Sybil Amuti, and I'm out. Peace.